Hello and welcome to our channel. Welcome back to all of you who have listened to these Dhamma talks previously. I'm grateful to each and every one of you for the time you're devoting to your Dhamma practice. May you all be successful. Today we're on page 52. We're following something called the 37 Wings of Enlightenment. And these are different categories that more or less repeat themselves with ways we can practice in order to be successful and reach the final goal. In the last discourse, we talked several times about concentration and mindfulness, and I've stumbled on a quotation that I'd like to add to that, as if I had said it the last time or yesterday. It says Vipassana meditation and mindfulness used to examine the true nature of the mind is the practice of the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path. This results in the ending of the charade of self and the ending of the entire fabricated creation of a personal drama we have called our life. So we're now in the on this page of 51. We started talking about the Four Noble Truths. We'll be continuing to talk about them for several days. I hope you might consider listening to what I just read more than one time. It summarizes that mindfulness and meditation is the practice of the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path. All right, let's begin at the top of page 52, Nirodha. So this is number 3 of the Four Noble Truths, and it's cessation, or the end. Nirodha is the cessation of dukkha following the strength of the magga, or the path. Magga is the Pali word for path. The cessation of kilesa, avidya, or dukkha, extinguishes dukkha bit by bit in conjunction with sila, that's our virtue, our good moral conduct, our ability to concentrate and stay focused for longer periods of time, and the wisdom that arises as a result of that samadhi. And magga, the Eightfold Path, sila, samadhi, and panya. So it's characterized, it's defined, it's summarized as good moral conduct, which is the foundation stone for being able to concentrate, and the concentration results in wisdom. I've talked about it before as a three-legged stool. You cannot have balance in our life or success in practice if we take out one of the legs of a three-legged stool. Let's just remember that sila is just 5. It's just 5 vows that we take to ourselves to live a wholesome and virtuous life, not to kill living beings, not to take what does not belong to us or the owner does not wish for us to have, not to commit sexual misconduct, which is briefly defined as intimacy with people under age, people engaged to be married, people who are already married. Those are the three most basic definitions. And we have those built into our laws in most cultures as well. And then right speech. Right speech is incredibly hard. It has 4 basic definitions I'm not going to go into now. But it starts with honest speech, that we're not exaggerating, we're not fabricating, we're not lying, we're not deceiving. Our speech can be trusted. And the last one is we don't use intoxicants because they inhibit our ability to stay mindful. We lose control of the mind when we use intoxicants. And of course, many of them are deadly over longer periods of time. People die from alcohol abuse, they die from various drug overdoses, etc. So there's that critical component also as to why we need to live a moral life. But in terms of our Dhamma practice, it's because it's essential to have constant conscious awareness. And that flies away, that disappears entirely as we become intoxicated. And number 4 says Magga, or the Eightfold Path. So that's Sila, Samadhi, and Panya. They are repeating themselves. Remember, in the time of the Buddha and until very recently, the last 100 or 150 years, people could not read or write. There were not books, and people did not go to school. Only the wealthiest could go to school. And nowadays, of course, we have more or less free public schools as well as private schools, and education is much more readily available. The problem is that the way we learn in school is not the way we must learn when we practice the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path. We must be researching, examining, inquiring, discerning the nature of the mind, not memorizing scriptures, arguing, debating with others, theorizing, speculating. Those behaviors are all sankharas, they're all distractions, they all are forms of delusion. So back to number 4, Magga, the Eightfold Path. And what is that? It's divided into 2 groups of 3 and 1 group of 2. And those groups are called Sila, moral or virtuous conduct, Samadhi, forms of meditation, and then wisdom. The middle way between love and hate, between all opposites. That's another way of talking about equanimity or tranquility, where we're neither happy nor sad, we're neither craving nor rejecting or resisting, we're neither demanding or accepting, we're just in this middle place. The goal, it's not where we live very often, but the goal is equanimity. The removal of kilesa is magga. So the kilesas are the forms that dukkha or suffering takes. They're the foot soldiers in this war with tranquility, with equanimity. And we're removing those bit by bit, slowly, ever so slowly, but ever so persistently as we walk the path. So remember, Magga just means path. Magga is the cleansing agent of kilesa. So these 8 steps, which we're going to be talking about in the following pages, is the technique or the method or the solution or the antidote to the way the mind works when it's working to create suffering. The mind wandering outside of samudaya, the cause of suffering. So, if we have constant conscious awareness, if we have a strong samadhi, the ability to stay focused, then the mind does not wander, and the wandering by definition is suffering, because we have left the path, we have left the Dhamma, and the mind has taken over and wandered away. And by definition, wherever it wandered, if it wasn't on the path, it will be some form of suffering. The result of the wandering mind is suffering, dukkha. The mind seeing the mind is a magga, or path. So insight meditation, vipassana meditation, is the way that the mind comes to see itself. The result of the mind seeing the mind is nirodha, the cessation of suffering. Nirodha is sometimes substituted for the word nibbana. In any case, if we cannot examine the mind, we are not practicing vipassana, we are not practicing the Eightfold Noble Path, we are not on the path to our own liberation if we're just thinking about and memorizing the teachings from an intellectual point of view. So, for myself, I don't consider myself to be a Buddhist if I'm not practicing. I have a master's degree in religious studies, but that has nothing to do with the practice of the Dhamma. So the next sentence is, the Four Noble Truths don't happen step by step, but simultaneously. So technically, once we have right view, we understand, we have right understanding, we have right speech, we have right livelihood, right actions, etc., right effort, right samadhi, right panya, because we have the right view of each of those things. I heard a teacher say, I can't say if it's true or not, the perfection of any one of the Eightfold Noble Paths will be the perfection of all of them. So it's not as if we have to start with number one and go step by step, although there's no reason we can't do that. But perfecting anyone, it says here, Four Noble Truths don't happen step by step, but simultaneously. Well, that's good news. The next heading is Majjhima Patipada. So that's a Pali word to describe the Eightfold Path. And today we'll start with right view, number one. Samaditthi, right view. Here's some definitions. To know vice and virtue and their consequences. It's very often that we do things, we say things, we think things, excuse me, without giving any thought to the consequences. People commit heinous crimes and then cry in court when they're convicted. They feel like they've been victimized by society or some institution because they gave not enough thought, perhaps no thought, to the consequences of their behavior. Now, those are extreme cases. We're trying to learn by listening to these talks and by the practice of our own Dhamma, to examine our own mind. It's too easy to see the mistakes that others are making. It's just way too easy. And by contrast, it's quite difficult to see the mistakes we are making, because the normal secular mind is always defending itself. It's always presenting itself to us in the best possible light. The imagery is a wolf in sheep's clothing. So we always have the best possible explanation for why we do things, why we said things, why we didn't do something, why we didn't say something that might have been expected of us. And without a deep and penetrating sati, we won't see that we had ulterior motives. We had even sinister or unwholesome, unloving or unkind motives for things that we said or did, although we dressed up the reason so it wasn't offensive to us. So know vice and virtue and their consequences. All of the consequences are going to come back to us. They may impact others, no question about it, if we're living in society, but ultimately every thought, every word, and every action will come back to us as a karmic seed bearing fruit. Then it says, to know and understand the Four Noble Truths. So if we were in a university course and taking an exam, we would have to be able to write down what the Four Noble Truths are. And we may have to give some description of them as part of an exam. But in this case, we're talking about knowing them from an internal understanding, from a heart understanding, from the practice of examining how these Four Noble Truths are being expressed all day, every day in our daily secular life. So understanding means to see how they work in the mind, our secular mind, moment by moment and day by day. The next right view is to accept the truth of karma or kama. We have talked about it repeatedly. I'm unsure of how many listeners have listened to all 51 previous pages. From what I can tell, very few people are going page by page. So I want to repeat myself more often than I would if I thought people were tuning in from page 1 continuously. So there's a definition of karma that says, I am the maker of my own karma, and I'm the heir. I'm the one who inherits my karma. I do not get anyone else's karma. My parents don't make my karma, or my siblings or neighbors or classmates or co-workers. No one makes karma for me. I make all my own karma, and therefore whatever experience I have is the result of something I said or thought or did in the past. If we understand this, we never blame society, our partners, our co-workers, the police, the government. We never blame anyone for some experience that we have. We accept that we are the author of every moment of our life. There's no such thing as an accident. There's no such thing as karma being delivered to the wrong person. There's no such thing as innocence, and therefore there's no such thing as tragedy, meaning something terrible happens that should not have happened and that we didn't have any part of. So this acceptance of karma means we don't get angry, we don't judge, we don't retaliate, we don't act in any way that suggests that we're blaming other people for the experiences that we're having. So you can see karma's really difficult. It's really profound. Most people have no idea that they are the author of every moment of their life. And the good news is, once we recognize that, once we take responsibility for our life, we have the opportunity to be very careful what kind of karma we're making for the future. So if we're unhappy with our present or past karmic experiences, we will be much more awake, we will have more mindfulness, we will have a strong and powerful intention to be careful what we think or what kinds of thoughts are arising in consciousness, what kinds of words are coming out of the mouth, and what kinds of actions the body is taking. And in this way, we're constantly rewriting the future with how we are behaving in the present moment. The next sentence says, to understand that the body and the mind are composed of dependent components. They are not we, they are not ours. So this is the theme of this whole booklet, that the body is composed basically of 4 elements, and those elements are subject to laws of nature that govern those elements. They arise, they live for some time, they age, and possibly get sick and pass away. And that whole process is more or less out of our control. And the mind itself also is independent, actually independent of the body. This is not something we should believe. This is possible to have the direct experience of separating the mind from the body. The body doesn't know that we are claiming it as belonging to me, as constituting the definition of me. It's something like an organic robot. It needs a certain amount of energy, a certain kinds of energy, and rest, and so on. It's subject to injury, illness, and death, all of which the mind cannot control. So it's composed of dependent components, and those components do not have an I quality, a me quality. This is not me, this does not belong to me, this is not myself. So that's right view. This is essential to having right view. And if we don't have right view, we're likely to have wrong view of the next 7 steps in the Eightfold Noble Path. Thus, the mind sees the path to be the cessation of suffering. So, those who have right view can see that the practice of the Eightfold Path, a path by definition, leads somewhere. Where does it lead? To the cessation of suffering. And suffering arises out of misunderstanding. It's a flaw in our perception. It's a flaw in our understanding of the way the world works. And finally, a right view, the key that opens the door to Dhamma. So, without right view, we're going to continue walking on a path, some kind of path, misguided, having misunderstood the nature of the real laws or the pure laws of Buddha's teachings, the pure Dhamma. Okay, I think we've concluded page 52. Now we're going to start talking about the other 7 factors on the path in future discourses. I want to thank each and every one of you who've patiently listened to the end of this Dhamma talk. I'm grateful for your time and your attention, and I trust and believe these Dhamma seeds will take root and prosper and be a blessing to you and others. Thank you very much.